All right, good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about converting Shazam to embedded fields. This was something that Tanya and I had talked about a few months ago, and I thought it was a good thing to present on because we had a lot of old projects that were built with Shazam before the embedded field feature was created in RedCap. And if people aren't familiar with Shazam, it was sort of it was an external module that did what the embedded fields does now. So it allows you to create um, complex layouts using HTML directly. So there's no rich text editor. You have to build it directly with HTML. So this is an example that I grabbed from the All of Us project. So it's not too complex, but there's some good detail in here that it's a good example to use. So this would be built with Shazam, and so if you go to Shazam setup here, this is how it has to be built. You have to type all of this HTML, so you have to be a little savvy with HTML to use this. Plus, there's some additional functions that you have to use with Shazam that allow you to display the icons and things like that. And you also get to use the label parameter. So instead of having to type the labels into Shazam, you just use the field name and then colon label, and it'll add that for you. Um, so that will actually let me go to the designer here to show you how this works. Because what it does is it essentially takes those fields and you put them in and embed it in a descriptive text field. So we create a descriptive text field called Shazam demographics that doesn't have anything in it. And then when you add your Shazam field, you select which field you want to put the HTML in, and then that's where you add the HTML. So it's sort of like the embedded fields, but everything is kind of compartmentalized, and you have to use the Shazam module to do all the heavy lifting for you. Um, so the good thing is that the HTML is already there for us to use because we can grab that and put it into an embedded field. But there are some things that we have to tweak and get it ready for an embedded field. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the HTML. I'm just going to copy it. The other thing while I'm in here to note is that one of the big things with Shazam was that it allowed you to apply CSS styling rules and JavaScript functionality rules in here as well. This doesn't have any JavaScript or CSS, but if you did have a project, I'm not going to demo it today, but if you did have a project that had CSS or JavaScript, you could take the code that's in here and put it in the in the CSS injector external module. And in the JavaScript here, you could take this out and put it in the JavaScript external module, the JavaScript injector, sorry. So you could still get that functionality if you have some built into Shazam. And it's really easy to just replace those. I think you just don't need the document ready function. I think the JavaScript injector does that for you. So you just need the code that's within this block here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the HTML. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to just paste it here into VS Code. And I have my editor where it automatically detects that it's HTML and gives me some styling. But I'm going to format it just to make it easier for us to read. Um, and then the next thing I'm going to do is go back to the designer and I'm going to create a descriptive text field. So now we're going to create an embedded field. I'm just going to call it embed demographics. Now, if I put the HTML here, I'll just show you. this is the Shazam component. So this is still showing up. This is the embedded field component. And you can see here that nothing is popping up. That's because the embedded field, for one, doesn't recognize this label parameter. So the labels aren't going to show up. They're not going to automatically be replaced. And the fields aren't showing up because they're missing the curly braces. So those are the first things that we're going to fix. We're going to go into the HTML here. And one of the things that I like to do is if you just do a control find on the closing tag for the table data element, that gives you the ending line for everything, because that's usually where the last part of it is, where your field is. You could do it on the underscore, but the problem is you may have fields that don't have an underscore, for example, like DOB. So if you're searching through for the underscores, you may miss something. So this gives you a way to just highlight where the ends of the lines are, and then you can scroll through here. See, these are all labels. This is a field, but this one is first name, last name. So then I'm just going to replace, I'm going to add the curly braces for these. That's a label. This is a field. And depending on how big your form is, this could be time consuming, but you're saving time by not having to rebuild all of the HTML and the formatting and the styling. So you're really just having to go in and make a couple of tweaks. And I like doing this in VS Code because it gives me some styling. If it was in Notepad, it's just plain text, black and white, nothing stands out. It's a little harder to do. Okay, so we got all those. So if I copy this and move it into our HTML here and then refresh, you'll see now up here, the fields aren't showing up in Shazam. That's because they're being used by the embedded field, the descriptive field. So this is a good way to check, because if you do see a field up here, then that means you missed one in the HTML when we were putting the curly braces in. It doesn't look like we missed any. So you can see now that they're all showing up properly. And now the next thing we have to do is fix the labels. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this to a different screen so I can see it while I'm typing. And then we'll go back here. Most of them are named the same. And a good thing here is that they all have this colon label, so you could grab that and just do find for that. It's going to highlight all these labels, so it's easier to spot them. So first name, And we'll get to these name checks and email checks and those in a second because those are going to be a little bit different language preference. And you don't have to do this in HTML. So if you're more comfortable doing it in here, we can go back to this. For some reason, it keeps changing the demographics to black. So if you want to do it here, if it's easier for you to find them here, by all means. This also allows you to triple click and select the whole block of text. So the one thing you want to make sure of is that if you are editing in here and in the HTML file in VS Code or Notepad or whatever, you want to make sure that whatever you do your last updates in, you update the other one. Because if you've made changes in one and then you made changes in the other, but then you go back to editing the other one, you're going to miss out on some of the changes. So like I had started changing the labels here. If I went to the next step in here, my labels are going to be messed up. So just make sure you grab this and paste it back into your HTML here. And then the next thing is if we look at, so I'm just going to save this real quick and bring this back down. If I refresh, now the labels are here for most of these, but these name check labels are not. And I could replace those, but similar to how I did this. But the problem is these have, if we look up here, this is the label for that name check. So it's got a bunch of text. There's some formatting and there's some HTML. So there's some colors and some bolding and some bullet points. So each one of these has to be done by going into that field and grabbing the HTML from it and then putting it into the HTML in the text file. So if we go back to the designer here and we're going to scroll up. So the first one here is the name check. So we're just going to click on edit field and click on the source code. And we're just going to copy all of this. And then we're going to go down to, and we're going to say name check. And that's where we want to put it. So let me format this again, just so it's not off the screen. There we go. So now we want to replace this name check label with all that HTML that we just copied. And then the next one is, I think it was email check or DOB check. And you can scroll through here and find, like, if you wanted to just do underscore check to highlight which ones had checks on them, you'll see that. But it depends on what your style of working is. Sometimes it's better to do the whole field and you'll see because some of them are not in the order that you're expecting them to be. So the next one is the address check. So we have address check, and then here, this is the example I'm talking about. So we have a phone check two, and then phone check, and then email check two, and then email. So in the order of the fields here, um, phone check is going to come up first. So if you're getting kind of in a rhythm, you may not pay attention to the order, and you may just go to the next check in this view, and then go to your HTML page, and then just paste that in the next check that you see. But it's out of order. So this is actually going to go to phone check. So if we did phone check, it's down here. Phone check two is up here. So we want to replace this one. And then there's phone check two. And then the next one is email check. But the next one in here is email check two. So we want to go down to email check. And then back up to email check two. And I think that one's it. So now we'll grab this. And one of the things we can do now that we've replaced the field labels with the field names, and then we've replaced all the checks with the HTML, we can go back here and check to see if there's any other labels that are popping up. So here's one that's email for program label. So that's one we missed. So we're going to go to here. And we're just going to grab the text for this. And this one doesn't have any HTML, but it's more than just like email for program, like first name or last name. So it's good to find the field so that way you copy the text exactly as it is for that question. And now there's no results for labels. So we replaced all the field labels. So that's pretty much it. But there's one more thing we need to do because if we look at this compared to the Shazam, you'll notice that for the text boxes and the check boxes, there aren't any icons. So you don't have the comments icon or the history icon, and or actually for any of them. So the nice thing is that it still does have the reset for these, but you don't have any of the icons, so you can't see any of the history of what this field used to be. But that's an easy fix. So once we've done um, once we've added the curly braces for the fields, it's really easy to just replace those. So in my VS Code, I'm just going to hit Control H to bring up the replace function. And I'm just going to do the curly brace here. And then I'm going to replace that with icons. So colon icons and then a curly brace. And what that's going to do is any curly brace here, which designates a field, is going to append. It's going to basically replace this last curly brace with colon icons and then a curly brace. So it's going to add the icons for it. And I'm just going to do replace all. And then while we're in here, one of the last things that we want to do, and it's not crucial, so if you forget it, don't worry about it, but these Shazam icons here, these classes for Shazam and Shazam icons, those are things that the Shazam external module uses to style, and there's just functionality that's built into these classes. But since we're not using Shazam anymore, we can get rid of that. So if we just select this whole block here and just copy and paste it here. And then if we just leave that blank, it'll remove them all. So we can get rid of all those Shazam icon classes at once. And then we select this and we'll put it back into the source code here. So now you can see that nothing is showing up here for the labels because all the labels have been removed from Shazam. The names, the fields are not being showing up because they're being used by the embedded fields. The only thing that's showing up now is the hard-coded labels that were in Shazam. And then if we go down here to the demographics, the labels are showing up, the fields are showing up, the comments are showing up. We don't have the history yet because this field isn't saved, but if I hit save and stay, it's going to complain. But when I come back down here now, the history icon shows up for everything. We have the text for the field labels for these check fields, and everything is showing up. So once you confirm that everything is fine and everything is showing up the way you want it, then you can go back to your designer and then just delete the Shazam demographics descriptive field, and your form would look the way it did in the beginning. So there is one more thing that I want to show, or just at least talk about. In the Shazam module, there was a way for you to use this class here, or this, sorry, it's an attribute called Data Shazam Mirror Visibility. And then what it did was it acted like branching logic. So if you had a table row that had fields in it, you could show or hide that table row depending on whether or not this. So for example, in here, that's the clinical trials field. That if that field is visible, then it's going to show these other fields here. So that was a way to kind of do branching logic. If you have that in your Shazam, then the branching logic would still have to be set already for this. But you would just have to set that in your branch, because the branching logic's already set for that field. For example, the clinical trials field already has branching logic on it that's either going to show it or hide it. You're just going to remove this from your Shazam, and then in the embedded field, it will still basically show up or hide, but instead of in Shazam, it shows the entire row or hides the entire row. So it kind of toggles on and off. But with the embedded field, the row stays there, but the field inside of it will turn on or off. So just to show you really quickly what I'm talking about, let me just refresh this. Like for example, if I have the email address, let's see, where is it? This one here. So if I set the branching logic here, which I already did, for email address is not blank, then it should not show up. So you can see here that the question still shows up for that field, but the field itself doesn't show up. But if I type, now it's showing up. So as soon as I enter a valid email, or actually as soon as I enter anything in it, it will, I think it takes a little bit, but as soon as there's a value in there, that's going to pop up. So you don't really have to do anything to mirror this. It doesn't hide the row like it would with Shazam. But the branching logic's already there still, so you can still see it working. One of the things that I would do is if I had a group of fields that needed to show or hide, I would basically break them out into a separate embedded field. So you would see a little bit of a break here in between, but you don't even really notice it. They'd still kind of be stacked together, but you could have that entire block showing or hiding that entire descriptive field. showing or hiding based on the branching logic. So that's the way I get around it. The other thing with Shazam is that because you can do the labels and the label icons, if anything is required, it'll automatically show the red text under here with the asterisk that says must complete field or something like that. You don't get that with embedded fields. You would have to style that on your own. So that's another thing to keep in mind. You would basically just go into the design here, and if you do shift enter, it'll bring it. And so like must or whatever it's called, is it must complete field or something like that, or required field. Let's just do required field, and then you can style it however you want, but you would have to do that manually for every required field. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Um, and like I said, it's not, it's not a quick solution, but it saves you a lot of the formatting. You're not having to build all of this again. You're not having to do all the coloring again. You're really not having to touch much of the HTML, besides replacing the fields and the labels. Everything else, the design wise, is still there. And it's a nice way to move it from Shazam to embedded fields. You lose some functionality that Shazam had, but then it's more future proof and it's easier to edit because now you can go back in here and you have it styled. Because that's one of the nice things about this versus Shazam is in Shazam you have to you can only see it in HTML. So I would go in here, and if something didn't look right, I'd have to change it in here and then go back and actually create a record, open it up, see if it fixed the problem, come back here. It's like back and forth, where you're here, you can kind of see what it's going to look like, ahead of time. You do get some of the problems with the spacing just because of the way it's in this little window here. But when you're editing, if you go to the full view, you can kind of see how everything is spaced out. But at least you're getting a visual representation ahead of time. So it's nice to move into the embedded fields and use that functionality instead of using Shazam, which, um, you know, takes a lot of work and you got to know HTML. So does anybody have any questions about that?
Manny, for language preferences, the result in the window that you were showing uh, sort of scrolled to a second line. Can you change that? If you want to look, can you look at how it displayed itself?
What's this?
Just show how the form looks in live, not just not the code. Yeah. Get show show it as though you were entering data into it.
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
Okay, now do you see language preferences, how it's scrolled down to the bottom and it's not all one? Can you change that so that it like is uh,
Up and
one
down.
line after another? Or do you have to,
Yeah, so this one you would do so the easiest way to do that would just be to change this.
okay.
Um, you could go in and mess with the HTML. Did I save that?
You did horizontal again, I think.
Oh yeah, I did left horizontal. Yeah.
There you are.
So
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you could see how to make that rather than scrolling down to the bottom like that.
yeah, and this is one of the things that you have to worry about when you use the icons, because if you don't have the icons, things might will fit a certain way, but whenever you add the icons, RedCap's going to take some of that spacing away. And so you may have to, like, for example, you may not want to fit 3 fields up here. You may want to break them up, into 2 fields or something like that. And you can see here, like this one kind of breaks the side. There's little styling things that you might have to fix, but at least this gets you in the ballpark to getting, your fields from Shazam to the embedded fields, and then you can work from here.
Yeah, sweet.